Test. Welcome, guys. How's everyone tonight? Good. You guys got your coffees? You guys good? Did you guys get caught in that blizzard on the way up here? No? No one got caught in this snowstorm? Okay. Just me?
I got caught.
Yeah.
In Edmonton, I got caught.
Yeah. Well, guys, welcome to tonight. We want to give a special shout out to the college and career guys that are here from Southview, and welcome also to our online viewers tonight. My name is Josh. I'm the Community Hub Coordinator here at the church. How many of you guys have heard of the Hub? Some of you? A few? Yeah? So guys, essentially we've been given a community grant, our government grant by the government of Alberta, and that sponsors seminars like tonight. And so we do community health, mental health seminars. We've done stuff on finance. We run an after-school program, which Alex is one of our tutors. He's here tonight. And really, it's just to support mental health in the community, and it's all funded by the government, which is pretty cool. How many of you guys have heard of pornography? Don't be afraid to raise your hands. It's okay. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. As some of you guys may have heard in churches, you may not have heard, or in different spaces, pornography is I would say it's an epidemic within the pandemic. It's a very big industry that's affecting our world as young people, but not just young people, in marriages and relationships. And it's a very, it's got a lot of effects, and you guys may have heard of that or seen that even in your own lives. So today we have my friend Matt here all the way from Edmonton, Alberta. He drove up to be with us tonight. Yeah, why don't we give him a hand? And Matt is the founder of Restored Ministries. It is out of Edmonton. Matt is a leading voice in Canada for this subject, which you guys will hear about tonight. He has a podcast. How many of you guys have heard of, you guys have heard of podcasts, I know. If you guys go on Spotify or whatever you use, Apple Music, you can go and search Pure Victory Podcast. He runs that and has episodes. He lives with his wife, Louise, and they have 2 young boys. And he's just passionate about seeing people, especially young people, get free from this and live lives of freedom from porn. So, if you guys have those small papers, did everyone get one on the way in? Because this topic tonight can be a bit more sensitive and heavy, if you guys have any anonymous questions for Matt, he also has a friend here tonight sharing as well. I want you guys can write out those questions, because we'll have a Q&A time at the end, but if you're not comfortable speaking it out loud or sharing your question, I get that. So you can write it out, and we'll come around after, and you can drop your question in the bucket. Does that make sense? Cool. For our online viewers, I will put a number in the chat box through Zoom, and you guys can text in your questions if you have any questions for Matt as we go along. Okay, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you. We can maybe, let's see. There, I'll turn this bad boy off. We got it. All right, cool. Well, how many are comfortable talking about porn? Nobody, okay. How many of you guys have watched porn? That's going to be for sure like negative. I know there's no answer to that. Porn is like a 4-letter word, right? Like nobody wants to talk about it. You think it's bad. Churches are like, man, sex, beautiful gift from God. We don't talk about it. And so it's funny that we're talking about it here. And you know, in the world, there's so many different media outlets talking about pornography, talking about immorality, all the effects of it, the brain science, the economic effects, what it does to your confidence, your relationship. And so it's very important to talk about. And if you look at the trend of smoking and cigarettes, back in the day, I mean, my grandpa, I guess I called him my granddad. He wasn't grandpa. He was a stickler. I'm not grandpa, I'm granddad. And you spell it with 2 Ds. This is my granddad. And so he just liked what he liked. And so one of the things that he really liked in life was cigarettes. And so there's pictures of him smoking. But my mom's like, man, nobody knew that it was bad. It wasn't bad back then. There's all this research coming out about smoking. And you can see when they started doing research that the trend of smoking slowly started to go down. And the last 15, 20 years, it's gone down and down and down and down and down every single year. The more that we know, thanks buddy, the more that we know, the less people want to use it because they realize the effects that it has on their life. And it's the same thing with pornography. For years, people have been like, man, it's fine, it's fun, it helps marriages, it's just good. I mean, we're all animals, we're all made with a sex drive. Why not watch it? And so you see the effects of it now, and there's McLean's doing articles on it, and there's different documentaries coming out about it. And so we're starting to see it, and that's why it's so good We're talking about it. You guys are here. How many didn't know that we were talking about porn tonight? There's a few of you. You guys got tricked into coming. Good stuff. But the rest of you knew. But that's always fun. At least I got some answers for that one. But also these pads of paper, if you don't have a question, I'd appreciate it if you still said something like drew me a picture, maybe a nice little note, like give me a compliment. I'm kidding about that stuff, but just write something. You can write, I don't have a question, because I want to get papers from everybody. And that way when I'm reading, it's not, hey, this question's probably from you, Gareth, because Garrett, 2 R's, 2 T's, right? Because then everybody's got a paper. And so I'd appreciate it if everybody just wrote something, even if you don't have a question. And that'll be really good. So I was like most people. I was at a friend's place. We were playing games. We always play video games, hockey in the basement. And he showed me his computer, and he was like, hey, look at this. And there's 2 pornographic pictures that he pulled up, and I was 11 years old. And I felt shock. I felt dirty and bad, but I also was so intrigued. And you guys are funny. I mean, I still feel like a young adult. I just turned 34. And you guys are like, well, you're not a young adult. I feel like it. Like sometimes I'm like, I feel like I'm 17. It feels like yesterday. But now this is going to age me because I'm talking about when I first got my iPhone. I'll talk about that later. You guys are like, we were born with iPhones. Back then, I was 11 years old, and high-speed internet had just come out. And so my buddy showed me these pictures, and I went home, and we had just got high-speed, which I don't think that you guys have probably ever been on a device that's as slow as high-speed was 23 years ago. It was so slow. And so I went home, didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't go to like Google or any search engine to look at pornography. I just typed it in like, I think that this celebrity's name and this word, porn, nudity, whatever, .com would be good. And so all these searches came up because I didn't know how it worked. And so then my dad found it and had a little talk, and I just kind of used his ignorance of the internet because he didn't know. And I lied my way out of it. And I just went on for 15 years, and 15 years from start to finish watching pornography. But it was about 8 years before I ever told somebody. And so in that 8 years, I just felt so dirty, and I felt so much shame and guilt, but then so much intrigue. And it's a natural thing that you're just intrigued because we have sex drives. And we get it when we're like 11, 12, 10. And you start being interested. And so when this thing hooks you, it hooks you big time when you're in your formative years, when you're young. And so when we're looking at pornography in a still picture, it does something in our brain. But when we're looking at pornography in a movie, in a video form, the visuals and the movement of it, it sticks in our brain even more. And so it's a high degree. I don't know how many times where it's like 40 times more greater the effect that it has when it's a video versus a graphic. And so when you're in your formative years, you really just get stuck. And it's a form of trauma. And your brain, as we're going to see later, your brain literally stops developing in some ways. And for women, you guys are smarter than us, so your brains are fully developed when you're 21. Guys take a little longer. We're typically like 25 by the time our brains are fully developed. But in this process, 11 to 21 or 11 to 25, 8 to 11 is typically the first time that you see porn. All of those years, your brain is getting hijacked by what you're looking at. And so there's a way to rewire the brain, but first we got to want to get free. And so part of what I want to do tonight is talk about all the different effects of pornography, and maybe not all of them, but I'm going to go over a lot of them. And I just wanted to start with a video from a couple years ago, a year and a half ago, when I was talking to an ex-porn star. And most porn stars, she's told me, last about a year, maybe 2 years in the industry, because the drugs and the manipulation and the abuse and all of that is just too much to take. And so she was in the industry about 7 years, and she was well-known, famous, like top of the game, won awards in Maxim for, top 10 hottest porn stars in the world. And so she was in that industry, and she suffered so much abuse. But I wanted to talk to her here about what the industry was like. And so I just got a clip here. We talked for about 45 minutes on this day, but she's also on our podcast, her and her husband, if you want to listen. Her name's Brittany De La Mora, and so we'll just listen for a couple minutes
I've always
here.
been a curious person. So when I was in the industry, I would ask, men and women, like, how'd you get in the industry? Why'd you get in the industry? And everybody always had a sad story. You would hear, well, I was molested at the age of 8, 10, and so this has just pretty much been my life. And, I like to explore my sexuality here. Or they would say things like, well, I had parents that would beat me over the head with the Bible and tell me that everything I did was wrong, and they were overly religious, and that I was just going to go to hell, so I figure might as well do what I want. It's like everybody had a story, but inside that person that might as well do whatever I want is a rebel. It's like me. Like, I was so hurt by my family that subconsciously I wanted to do the worst thing that I could possibly do to shame them and to hurt them, because hurting people will always hurt people.
Yeah. Wow, it's incredible. Would you like the relationships in the industry? We hear of people getting raped when they're in the industry and having that on film. I mean, I would assume that would also happen within the industry and it not be produced. Is that just a common occurrence with producers to actors or actor to actor even?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it depends on a woman's stance. So for me, I think I respected myself so little that I kind of was almost anything goes, because I didn't know how to say no. There were times where I just I would just take every scene because I was a people pleaser and I was afraid to say no. I mean, I have this tattoo on my arm that I'm getting removed, and I got this because it was in a place where I was like, man, I'm really depressed. I want to cut myself, but if I cut myself, I have a shoot tomorrow, and then I'm going to have these ugly, bloody marks all over my body. So I'm just going to go get a tattoo. So it's there's so much brokenness in that industry. And so, but yeah, there's there are specific scenes that you'll get paid for that are brutal, and they honestly are resemblance of rape. And so I didn't have an experience when I was in the industry where I was raped off camera, but I had experiences that I would leave the set crying with bruises all over my body. I just was man, I hate that. I never want to do that again. That was the worst thing ever, because they basically rape you on camera, but because it's on porn or on camera and it's legal, then it's okay.
That's pretty sick, hey? They're basically raping you on camera, but because it's legal, it's okay. And girls, she says, girls are crying and they just edit it out. Girls are crying. She says sometimes the girls are crying and they can't edit it out, so they just leave it in and you can see it, but you don't know why they're crying. And I mean, just the horrors of the industry are so extreme, but when you're watching it, all you're thinking about is you. And all you're thinking about is oh, they're so hot, or I like that, or I like him, or I like her, and it's all you think about is you. And so it really messes with your system and how you're made to interact with people. And there was a 16-year-old guy who I was working with in the industry, and I said, why do you want to get free? And he just said, it affects my friendships. I can't focus when I'm with guys. I can't focus when I'm with girls, because all I'm thinking about is just the porn. And when you hear that, it brings a human element to what's going on the other side of the camera. And there's so much deception that's going on. And we don't know the evils. Now we know how it's tied to sex trafficking. Now we know She lately has had a friend who's committed suicide from the industry, but she said it's not the first. There's multiple girls that she was friends with in the industry that have died from either drug overdoses or suicide, and they're presented on screen I love this, and I love it, and I want more, and this is so much fun, and you can even see interviews of people in the industry that are going why wouldn't I like this? I get to have sex all the time with hot people, and I get paid. She made tons of money. There's another guy who's an ex-porn star. He made over $1 million in 6 years. They make really good money, but all of it goes to drugs. All of it goes to booze. All of it goes to the tattoos, just fixing, covering the pain, because they're in so much pain over what they're going through. And so I just got a Mac yesterday, and I don't quite know how to work it all the time, so it just shut off, but that might happen a couple times. I'm a PC guy, and my wife's trying to get me on Mac, and so she won. Let's see if we can go to the next one. So Pornhub is the industry leader, and Pornhub is owned by MindGeek, the pride of Canada. They're hosted in Montreal, and that's where their headquarters are. And MindGeek has so many layers of evil. There's lawsuits coming out left, right, and center against MindGeek. And before they had to delete a bunch of videos like I'll talk about, if you searched 14-year-olds, there's 100,000 hits on their website. But like Brittany said, but it's considered legal because porn is legal. If you go on porn sites, sometimes there's a "Are you over 18" button. Click yes or click no. Everybody just clicks yes. I was 12 years old, 13, 14. Just click yes, right? Well, lots of the sites, they don't even have that. And so you can go on and there's 100,000 videos in their 14-year-old section. There's very little content review done by MindGeek. And so what they would do is they have their model program, they call it, where they would produce their own content. But then they also have people who are making their own pornography, and they can upload videos and get paid for it. And so all of the videos that were uploaded to Pornhub, which there's a story in the New York Times about a 14-year-old girl who was kidnapped. Her parents didn't know who she or where she was for 3 months. And she was spotted on surveillance camera at a gas station with her abuser, with her kidnapper. And it turned out that her videos had been found by people who recognized her on Pornhub. And she was on there, but they never got reviewed. And the reason is because all of the staff at MindGeek, if they had the ability to, or if they reviewed all of the videos that were uploaded, each person would have to work 80 hours a day. So literally impossible. And so all of this content is coming up, and there's rape content, and we don't know that it's rape. We're just consuming it, and we're getting off to it, thinking that this is fun and this is what I like. And the whole time it's stunting our sexual development, and it's forming our sexual desires and our fetishes. And so there's a lot of evil that goes in here. It was about a year and a half ago, and they got taken to court in Canada and the US, and there were 12 million videos on their site, but they had to delete 10 million of them because there was no content review. And so Pornhub they're just getting attacked right now legally because of just their lack of conscience and what they're doing to people. So they own all the model content, and that's what I was talking about, their model program where they hire girls, they hire guys, and they produce their own content. But Brittany in the video, she's tried for years to get all of her videos offline. She's never been successful. And so her content is still out there. And now she's married. And you can listen to her podcast. We did one with her, and then we did the next one with her husband. I recommend listening to them. The Pure Victory podcast. And I think each episode has a number. I think they're about episode 59 and 60, somewhere in there you can look. And when he started dating her, he kept getting videos and pictures texted to him from people that knew him, or put it on his Facebook, like, you're dating her, and then it would be a picture of her from the industry. And so once it's on there, it's on there. And these girls, like I say, typically they're a year to 2 years in the industry, and guys too. But then once it's there forever. And so then they try to get a job. They try to get a normal life afterwards. And they can't get jobs. There's teachers that get fired once it comes out that they used to be a porn star. There's just such trouble. There's family turmoil. There's family dysfunction. Like she was saying, everybody has a sad story. And so bringing the human element to it is like, if we ever see it, it's like, what's the pain? Like, were they beat over the head with the Bible by their religious parents? Were they just told their whole life they were going to go to hell? Were they molested by their uncle continually for 8 years, and then they got promised the world through porn, but they don't want it? Like, are they on drugs right now, or all the money that they're making, are they going to go do drugs after this shoot? From what I'm seeing right now, because they're in so much pain. Bringing that human element to it is really powerful, because you don't want to, I think that we intend well, like we don't want to hurt people, and so seeing that really helps. Yeah, Pornhub just lost 2 court decisions trying to stop minors from lawsuits, and so this is just part of the evil of what they do. They literally, it's like they don't have a conscience. They were trying to legally block people who are on their site from suing them, but there's all these 14-year-olds, 13, 12-year-olds whose content is up there, and they're reliving their abuse. These kids are getting raped, these kids are kidnapped, and it's up there, and people are getting off to their worst moment of their lives. And MindGeek, Pornhub, the same company that we support when we go and watch their content, they're trying to stop these girls from getting justice. It's really, really evil. And so there's some tricks of the trade, and this is something that Brittany was telling me about, where there's mirror tricks for penis size. So, why would they do that? They're, like, just to get graphic, because this creates such an insecurity in people. It creates unrealistic expectations for girls. It creates unrealistic expectations for guys. It creates insecurity in guys. But it's not normal how they portray things as far as our body parts in the industry. It's not normal. And so Brittany was saying that when they film, they put a mirror up to the camera, and I don't know how they do it, but they put it up to the camera when they do close-ups, and then it looks a lot bigger, and then we see it, and we're like, well, what's wrong with us? Right? Guys are like, man, I'm not like that. I don't look like that. What's wrong with us? And it creates this insecurity where over and over and over again, porn is depicting that girls really love this, and then that's what the guy has, but then I don't have that. What's wrong with me? And so there's insecurity that comes from the industry. Another one is they film the ending first. And so porn videos could be half an hour long. It could be longer than that. And so you've spent, in my case, 15 years. A lot of time it's longer than that. A lot of time it's more hardcore than I ever got into. And you're going, how do they last? Like, how do guys last that long? How do they last? Like, I get married, I'm supposed to last for half an hour in bed, and then I don't? Like, what's wrong with me? But they don't even do that. They take drugs. This is, sorry to say this, Brittany was saying that they inject a needle. The guys inject a needle into their part, right? Like, just makes you want to squirm. And then they film the ending first so that then they can do it again and they can last longer to film the rest of the video and portray it that you're lasting as long as what it looks like. But it's just so fake. It's not reality. And so when you're watching it, I just want to make it super real. When we're watching it, we can think, what I'm seeing right now, like, did he just put a needle in that? Like, did he just shoot himself there? Did she? Like, attaching these horrific things to what we see online sometimes makes us just turn away because we're like, oh, I just want to squirm. I feel for the hurt that this person has in his life to make him do that. They hide the tears of the actors, like we talked about. They make the girl pretend to like it no matter what. Most porn videos have violence in it. But even if there's not violence, the guy is usually dominant. And if the guy is dominant, it's not what sex is designed to be. Sex is designed to be a servant thing. You take care of each other. You look for each other. Make each other feel good. Well, porn, it's all like, what do I want and what do you want? And we'll just try to get what we want. And if I do something for you, it's really for me. But then the girl likes it. And so there's stories of people who get married or they start having sex with girlfriends or whoever. And I've heard multiple of these stories where the guy will slap the girl in the face and she'll, what are you doing? Why did you hit me? Well, I thought you liked that. Every girl likes that because it's what he's seen in porn. And when it happens in porn, the girl's always like, hit me again. And she's portrayed as if she likes it. There's a lot of these stories where I was just seeing a documentary yesterday too, where guys were talking about just that how easy certain girls were, but that the girls liked it. And they liked it when guy after guy after guy would come after them and abuse them sexually. And the guys were saying, but she likes it. But it's because that's what porn portrays. And so it's not a realistic portrayal. What that does in our own life is then we come together and we have a relationship and we want to start having sex. And we have this expectation of how it's going to be, but it's not that way. You know, a lot of people, and this is just talking real, a lot of girls really struggle with having sex, with enjoying it. Doesn't always happen and doesn't always last. But especially at the start, there's a lot of pain. there's a lot of pain typically that happens, and there might be various things that cause pain, especially to the girl when she starts having sex, but you never see that in porn. And so then people start doing that in a relationship, and there's just turmoil, there's trauma, there's frustration, like, why are you like this? Why can't you handle this? Everybody's supposed to like this. The guy's frustrated, the girl feels bad. It's not a good cycle. Have you guys heard of anime porn? I'm not saying have you watched it, just have you heard of it? I've never watched it, but I've heard of it. It's typically like top 3, top 4, top 5 categories for pornography. And it's sick because with what the porn industry does, they target kids. And so there'll be pop-ups on little kids' sites. Like, I remember there was a 3-year-old kid. 3? That seems young. It was young. It was my buddy's nephew. And anyways, he was typing into his device, however young he was. And he typed in gummy bear, but he spelt it wrong. And so probably B-A-R-E instead of B-E-A-R, I don't know. But he spelt it wrong. And so what came up was pornography. You know, it might be like a kid searching naked, but it's N-E-K-K-E-D. So the porn industry takes all these words that kids will misspell. They'll attach porn to that as a tag word, or they'll put a website URL with those words, and they'll get kids. They'll go to kids' sites and they'll do pop-ups to pornography. Hey, want to meet? Hey, want to see this? And they'll click on that. And so they're targeting kids because they know that if they get us as a kid, that we're going to be a lifelong consumer a lot of the time. And so what they do with animated porn is they even partner with video games. And so with both anime, with video game partnerships, just as an example, Mario is one of the most popular video game characters in porn. And so if a kid is watching, or if a kid is playing a video game, and he's playing Mario, but now he's seen Mario on pornography, well, now every time he plays Mario Kart, he's going to think about the pornography. And so the kid can't get away from it because the industry has made anime and made video games part of pornography and vice versa. And so they're just interconnected. And no matter where the kid goes, he's going to get hooked and he's going to get reminded. And it becomes more and more normal. And it becomes normal in his life and in his mind. And he doesn't really even see what's wrong with it a lot of the time. And same thing with girls. It's the same thing. I'm saying but a third of porn searches are done by women. It's the fastest growing demographic. A lot of times when we run a conference for our organization, we'll partner with churches or different groups and just say, hey, do you want to promote it? And they'll say, yeah, we'll promote it to our men. And we're always going, no, you promote it to everybody. And half the people that come to our events or get involved are women when it's in person, kind of like today. Even though I know some of you didn't even know that you were talking about porn. But but it happens because porn is it's a draw for men, but it's a draw for women. And a lot of times, especially in junior high, girls are just so craving attention. Girls are like, I just want to get attention from the guy. But then the guys watch porn and he's like, yeah, but then I want you to do this for me. And she's like, well, I want to know what he likes. And so I'm going to go watch porn. And it's a sick cycle that happens because they're all about targeting kids and twisting our sexual development and twisting what we think is normal. They're actually ahead of the game. They target kids. They're ahead of the game in a lot of what they do. With DVDs, the porn industry actually is what started that. The thumbnails and suggested videos that we see on Instagram, the porn industry started that. The strategy of marketing, a lot of it, the porn industry leads the way. And so they know what they're doing when there's different even addiction strategies to get people addicted in social media. A lot of it is what the porn industry has already done. And so they're real leaders. But what they've done with the thumbnails is they've made it that you're never content. You're never happy. And so I know for me, when I was watching pornography, I would watch a show, but maybe it was 10 minutes long and I would get through 30 seconds and then I'd see a thumbnail and I'd be like, I'd rather watch this one. And then I'd watch this one, maybe a minute, but I'd fast forward to a part that maybe I liked and I'd try to find it and then I'd find it and then I'd watch for like a minute and then I'd see a thumbnail and I'd go to the next one. And the more I talked to to people, the more I realize that so many people do this, and it creates this environment in our minds, in our hearts, where I'm never content. It's never good enough. You get into sexual relationship, you get into marriage, and you're like, this isn't good enough. This is only one thing. I can't go elsewhere. I need to go elsewhere. And so pornography leads to 300% more likelihood of of cheating in marriages because of this, because of all the deception and all of the grass is greener on the other side, and I need more, and why can't I just get it when I want it? And so there's a lot of deception that we have to be aware of. It's a big number, hey? $97 billion going into the porn industry. It's more than the NHL, more than Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA combined in a year. That's how much money goes into this. And I always used to think, like, I never spent money. I never bought a membership. I never bought a magazine. I never contributed any money to this industry. I mean, I felt guilty enough just doing it when I knew it was wrong, but I never put money into it. But then I realized as I grew older, I'm like, no, I'm contributing, because every time I visit, just through visiting, they're getting traffic to their website that then they can charge more for ads, or I accidentally click on an ad and they get paid for that. And so the more we visit, even for free, that's why most porn is free, because they get paid for ads just on us visiting. And so there's big money that they want to attract, and that's why they're so good. That's why they're a leader in attracting people and causing people to be addicted and getting our brains wired in a certain way that we just go back over and over and over again. Actors often make $15 a shoot. I mean, imagine, like $1,500 a day. It'd be all right. A lot of people make $1,500 a month, especially young adults. Maybe. And so people are 18. Actually, Brittany was 18. Never loved in her life. Didn't have a good family life. She was partying with friends at a bar in Mexico, just dancing, just like girls do. And somebody came up to her and just, hey, you're beautiful. You could be a star. I'm a model. We got a modeling agency. You can come be with us. Hey, now you've taken this next step. Now you're with us. Hey, you could get paid $1,500 a day. She's like, well, I'm already having sex. I'm already promiscuous. I may as well get paid. And then you do this money. You get this money. But then they're told, like she was saying, some scenes are just so gross and she doesn't want to do it. But then the producers are there in the same room going, if you don't say this word, you're not going to get paid. If you don't do what I want you to do right now with this man, you're not going to get paid. And so there's manipulation that goes on constantly in the industry. Also, it's like a lot of people say in different industries, the guys get paid a lot of times more than the girls do, unless the girls do something. And so there's this manipulation, there's objectification, there's the dominance. There's a lot of dysfunction that goes on, but the money traps them. Because like the other guy, Joshua Broom is his name, and he made over $1 million in 6 years, but didn't have anything to show for it. But he made really good money. If he wants to make that money but go do something else, well, now his stuff is on the internet. How on earth can he go make that money? And so you get stuck because of the money factor in the industry. So it's interesting, this book, and it's called Sex and Culture, and I just want to read a clip from it. It says, investigation shows that the societies with the lowest amount of production are those where pre-marriage abstinence is not imposed. So the lowest amount of production, in other words, you're not very productive, you're not doing a lot in society. This is not individually, but societally. Where pre-marriage abstinence is not imposed. So it's encouraged that you're not abstinent pre-marriage. It's encouraged that you can just go sleep around. This ties in with societies not being very productive, and where the opportunities for extramarital sexual indulgence are greatest. So this book was based on a study that he did of 80 societies and cultures over like 6,000 years. He looked at tribes, he looked at different countries, different parts of the world, different parts of history, and all of what he saw from 80 different cultures is the pattern that he saw. And so where sexual indulgence is the greatest, there's the lowest amount of productivity. The cultural condition of a society rises in exact proportion as it imposes pre-marriage and post-marriage restraints upon sexual opportunity. So the cultural condition of a society rises, things get better, with exact proportion as it imposes the pre-marriage and post-marriage restraints upon sexual opportunity. And so it's not just pre-marriage, it's like after the wedding, you still need to learn how to restrain yourself from certain sexual opportunity. And if we're looking at this from a societal angle, it has to be true individually too. Like, it can't be that society is not doing very well economically, but individually all the individuals are rich. Like, if we are indulging in this stuff, we literally aren't as productive. We're not as creative. We're not as happy. And I'll get into some of that. But there's a real tie-in between the two, the sexual opportunities and the economics. After a nation becomes prosperous, it becomes increasingly liberal with regard to sexual immorality, and as a result loses its unity, its energy, and its purpose. So after a nation becomes prosperous, it gets to the peak of prosperity, then it becomes increasingly liberal with regard to sexual morality and loses its unity, energy, and purpose. So it peaks and then it goes down. The whole of human history does not contain one single instance of a group becoming civilized unless it has been absolutely monogamous, nor is there any example of a group retaining its culture after it has adopted less rigorous customs. So it's pretty crazy to see, hey? Like the tie-in between this stuff, how much pornography we watch, how much sexual opportunity we have, and how productive we're going to be in our life. All we ever get told by pornography is this is great, this is free, this is going to help you, this is awesome, you should want this, of course you want this. But we don't get told all the full story. So according to WebRoot, which is a cybersecurity company, porn leads to a 300% higher likelihood of infidelity, like I said. Another source, the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, polled 350 divorce attorneys in 2003, so this is a long time ago, where 2/3 of them reported that the internet played a significant role in divorces, with excessive interest in online porn contributing to more than half such cases. So 2/3 of divorce lawyers said that more than half of the cases mentioned online porn. 300% higher likelihood of infidelity. This is, 19 years ago? So imagine with accessibility how much worse it is now. The National Bureau of Economic Research, married couples are almost 10 times wealthier in retirement than singles. The second wealthiest type of household is where one spouse is widowed. So we want to be rich, like we want to be okay, we want to be secure financially. We don't have to be rich, but just secure, we want to be good. Marriage, and then marriage where a spouse dies. Those are the top two wealthiest kinds of way to live relationally. Porn leads to 300% higher likelihood of infidelity, and more than half of divorces quote porn. So this is really destructive, not just sexually, not just in our brain, but long-term economically. So for me, I never watched porn in my marriage. I had gotten free of it, and then I got married about a year and almost a half later. Well, I guess almost 2 years later. And still, my wife will sometimes say, now we've been married 6.5 years, it's been over 8 years since I was addicted to porn. And still my wife will say, like, what did you watch? What did you see? Like, what do you think about? What kinds did you see? And when you're married, when you're in the thick of it, and you're watching this, there's so much trauma. There's the effects of a wife finding out that the husband is watching porn, and especially when he's lied to her over and over again, the effects of that equate, like the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder, equates often to rape. There was a guy a couple of days ago who was telling me that he cheated on his wife for 18 years, and she had no idea. But then when she found out, he would say, yeah, I did this, and she'd ask more questions. Did you do this? No, I didn't do that. And she'd deal with what he confessed for a month. And then a month would go by, she'd deal with it, he would confess something else. She would realize that over and over and over again, he kept lying and he kept keeping that away from her. She had to over and over again deal with what was brought to light. And she thought that it was done, then there was more. Then she thought that that was it, then there was more. And so it's not just the act, but it's also the lying and the deception that causes PTSD in a lot of women. And so we need to understand that it's very, very important to end it tonight. Like if we're watching porn and if it's been an addiction or a habit, it's a really big deal to end it tonight. Like my wife didn't know me when I watched porn, but she's still affected by it. But how much more if I was doing it in our marriage, as so many people do? And it's not just her, but it's also us. And we might think, well, it's not hurting anybody. It's just me. It's just my secret. But it's hurting you economically. Like it's hurting your creativity. It's hurting your joy. And so it's important to want to get free. So the brain factor, there's a thing called mirror neurons. And mirror neurons it's kind of like monkey see, monkey do. And so it's cool. Like kids have it because it's like whatever they see their dad or mom doing, that's what they do. And I have two cute little guys. I just love them. They're 1 and 3 years old. And it's just so interesting. I mean, they see, for example, I didn't throw it. I licked a knife last week. There was just something, I don't know, icing or something. I licked a knife and my 3-year-old's like, Daddy, you're not supposed to do that, because he's done it before and he's seen me do it. And then he tried to lick it and then we're like, no, you're not supposed to do it. And so we need to be super careful with what we're doing because he's going to copy us. And it's because of these things called mirror neurons in our brain. So when we see pornography and we see the man being dominant, we see the girl just loving being abused and slapped on both sides of the face. We see bondage. We see her being arrested or handcuffed, to a bed. And he comes and has his way with her and she says, I love it, give me more. We see it and it creates objectification in our minds because of mirror neurons. And it literally creates neural pathways that's how we think. That's our default thinking. I remember when I got free, I took 2 years and about 3 months not watching pornography. When I was 21, I closed my computer one night and I just said, I want to be free of porn for a year before I date, because I don't want to have these images in my mind when I'm cuddling up with a girl. And so I was watching porn and I just closed it. And that was it. I didn't really think about it for a long time. And then one night, it was 2 years, 3 months later, I just got an iPhone and I was at work and my boss did something about some kind of weird twisted porn site that he had seen. So that night I was on my phone, I was in bed, and I was thinking, I won't like what he said he liked. Like, it seems weird. I forget what it was. I forget what he said that he liked, but I'm like, I won't like it. I may as well just look, just out of curiosity. So I went back to it. And I went back to that site that he talked about that I thought was weird, but within probably 30 seconds or a minute, I was back to my old site that I had gone to for years before. And there was this curiosity that came over me that, it's been a couple of years, more than 2 years. I wonder if it's still there. I wonder what's there. And so then I got caught 2 years, 2.5 years, even worse than ever. And I remember at the end of the second 2.5 years, I was walking by this girl. There was a man and a woman, husband and wife, that they're a little bit older than me. And they were my mentors, and I really loved them, and they helped me a lot in life. And I remember she was just like bent over at a coffee table, just rearranging flowers or something. And I walked by her, and I just had this urge to spank her. And I didn't do it, but I was like, what did I just feel in my hand? What was that? And it freaked me out. I don't think she's attractive. I didn't want that. But it's the mirror neurons that create objectification in our minds that just gave me the urge. And it freaked me out. Especially because I thought, how far have I now fallen? I was now about 25 when that happened. When I was 21 and I first quit porn, I remember thinking, sorry if this sounds bad, girls. I remember thinking, there's nobody that's attractive. Like, I would look around, I would want to date someone, I would want to marry someone. I'm like, there's nobody that's attractive. Because all I thought beauty was what I saw in porn. And so it took, I don't know, 6, 8 months, maybe a year. And this is now Girls Where It Sounds Better. Because then my brain started to change. And I started being able to literally see beauty in everybody. Like, it didn't matter what they looked like, but it's like every single, not guy, but girls that I would see beauty. Like, it was cool. Now my brain has kind of got back to normal where I'm attracted to my wife. She's it for me, and I love it. But the mirror neurons that we see, where we see what's going on on the screen, it really affects us more than we know. And it gets us to the point where we would do things that we never want to do, but it becomes so normal. You just think about yourself. And so this goes beyond sex. This goes to like anything. It could be financially. Do you spend money on other people, or is it just about you? It could be, do you want to give something to someone? Do you want to spend time volunteering to someone? Well, no, you're just thinking about you, because all you're doing is you're just thinking about you. All you've done when you watch porn, you just think about you. And so it creates this self-focused thinking in our brain. Violence is something that a lot of parents can look for in teens when they're even like 12, 13 years old. They might say, man, my teen has been like so peaceful and so kind forever, and boom, something switched. And all of a sudden he's like super aggressive with his sister, or he's just violent. He's like throwing things. Like, what happened? A lot of the times it's like within months of him starting to watch pornography. There's serial killers that they're on camera, and they, I always forget which one it was. It's either Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. Have you guys heard of them? So there's one of them that had an interview with Focus on the Family right before he was sentenced, or right before he was killed on death row. He said, before I would go on my sprees murdering people, I would make sure that I watch porn to get myself in the mood. He said, when I was younger and I first saw porn, it just had a grip on me. He didn't start out being a serial killer. He started out being a porn addict. And then he said, and all of the serial killers that I've met in prison, the majority of them, or all of them, I forget, watch porn before they would go on their sprees. It creates this mirror neuron effect where we see the violence and then it becomes okay. Because we just think, well, the guy was violent, but the girl liked it, and I'm not the only guy that's violent. It must be okay. I might have said that before, I can't remember, but 88% of top 50 videos in 2010, the 50 top most popular rental videos, in 2010, they depicted violence. 88% of them. I mean, it's pretty extreme. There's the superiority, the inferiority that we've kind of talked about, where there's always a dominance in pornography. I mean, how many people, you're not going to put up your hands, I understand that, but if you've ever watched porn, you've never seen a porn title that's like, husband and wife flirt all day, make love, and cuddle in bed after. Like, there's no porn video that has that. One guy that we interviewed on our podcast recently, he was talking about how porn isn't sex, and sex isn't porn, is very different. And he said if porn wanted to really accurately demonstrate what sex is, it would have to be a 12-hour-long video. I thought it was so funny. He's like, they would have to film the husband getting up early in the morning before the wife and making her coffee and then going to work and saying I love you and kissing her on the forehead on the way out and texting her flirty texts from work, and she would text back, and they would be excited throughout the day and get home and they'd have dinner together, and then they'd come together and then they'd make love and then they'd cuddle after. It's like, that's what sex is. Like, a lot of people say foreplay with sex, it doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts at 9 a.m. in the kitchen. It starts early when you're coming together emotionally. And so the superiority, the inferiority, that's not part of healthy sex in a relationship, in marriage. It's not part of it, but it's what porn displays. And so there's negative effects on the brain. And I'm going to kind of go through this quickly just to get to a visual. But MRI scans literally show that our brains, where joy is produced in our brain, that with porn addicts, it doesn't happen. I was telling David, who's with me on the way down here, I actually couldn't laugh for a period of time after the second stint with pornography, the last time that I was done. People would tell jokes, like I'd be with buddies, we'd be hanging out, telling stories, and I actually literally couldn't laugh. it took a miracle. Like it took something. It's different. It's a cool story for another day. But something happened where I realized that I just couldn't laugh when people were telling jokes. And I look at this and I'm like, but I was watching porn like all the time. And if I look at the brain science, it actually makes sense. There's motivation that's affected when we're watching porn. Even from a practical standpoint, we already went over the economics from the book, the quote, which talks about the production of a society. The motivation in our brain, it gets affected. But even from a practical standpoint, when you're doing something where you don't feel that good, you feel a little bit dirty, you don't wake up the next day just high on life, excited to go make a difference, excited to go to your job or excited to go to school. You don't wake up feeling like, oh man, I'm going to have a great day of productivity. You're feeling heavy. You're feeling like guilt and shame. And I hope nobody asked me what I did last night. And so even apart from the brain science, just practically speaking, it really does hinder our motivation and our productivity. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, how much do you value yourself? Like, do you know your value? Do you know why you were made? Do you know who made you? Do you know the value that was placed on your life? Do you value yourself enough to not put you in a situation where you're going to get guck on your life? Like, I've got wealthy friends, and I was at their place in the summer, and it was funny. I got there, and the garage door was open, so I went in their garage door, and the guy's just a little bit shorter than me, and he was bent over in his garage, putting his hockey bag in the front of his Porsche in the garage, because the Porsche that he has, the engine is somewhere, I don't know where it is, maybe in the back, but the front is all the trunk. And so you pay extra for that feature. And so he's putting his hockey bag in the front, but he's bent over, and I'm coming in, and I'm bent over because over top of us is a lift. And so I'm asking him about the lift. Why do you have it? And he's like, well, in the winter, when it's dirty and when it's yucky outside, we don't drive the Porsche. And so we lift it up in our garage to save space. And I'm thinking about that going, they placed a value that's a high value on the Porsche where they don't want to put it in environments where there's guck, where it's going to get scratched, where it's going to get dirt on it. So if we're engaged in this stuff, how much do you value yourself? Do you really know the value that you have? Because if we really do, we're not going to want to engage in behavior where we're not productive, we're not motivated, we can't even laugh with friends. We can't have the joy that we're made to have. I think that there's, along with our value, that each of us have gifts. Each of us has a unique personality. Each of us has something that's unique to us that goes with our purpose, that goes with how we can specifically and uniquely impact people and make a difference in the world. And when we compare ourselves all the time, which pornography has us comparing ourselves, social media has us comparing ourselves, well, we're not confident because we compare someone else's best to our worst. And that's what we focus on. But can you look at what's good about you? Can you look at the strengths that you have? Can you even look at the weaknesses that you have and see the value in your weakness? Like for me, with what I do, I don't really have a lot of skills apart from this. I grew up playing high-level hockey. I played for Hockey Canada. I played against the Hitmen. I played in Red Deer for the Rebels. And that was my focus. And so when I got out of that, I had headaches for 6 years because I got a concussion. And I was 24. And the headaches really affected me, but my focus in hockey had been, that's what it was. Then the headaches limited me from doing stuff. Then I started a couple businesses, and that was good, and it was fun. But then I started doing this. And so in my whole life, like I don't have a lot of handy skills, mechanic skills, just basic like art, like guitar, music. I can't do any of it. I sing and my wife's like, honey, stop. You sound like a dying cat. Like it's just like, I don't really have that. But that doesn't affect my confidence because I know that my weakness made me not able to succeed in certain areas that I wasn't made for. And so now I can do this. And like Josh said, my voice can go out about a really serious situation where people's lives are getting wrecked. And I don't I wasn't distracted by other skills that I have, and so there's a value in my weakness, and I'm confident in who I am and who I'm made to be, because now I can make a difference and I can impact people. And I can actually use a weakness that was in my life for 15 years to now the transformation that I've had, now I can use that. Like, do you have confidence in who you are, who you're made to be, and your gifts and your weaknesses and your strengths? I hope that you do. But when we're watching porn, there's this comparison effect. There's the part of our brain that thinks logically, that I'll show you here in a sec, that literally gets demolished. And we can't think rationally and think straight about who we are anymore. Porn stops our ability to feel empathy for other people. And it kind of goes with the objectification and the violence that we've talked about already. But even with what the serial killer said, it's like they don't feel for other people. Like, they don't feel that people are sad. They don't feel sorry for other people or have compassion. But we're made to. Like, that's part of how we can make a difference in this world, is have compassion for people. And so when we're in this, our brain literally doesn't develop properly, and so we can't have the empathy that we're made to have. So this is the brain, and a very simple picture, but in the middle, the limbic system is in the middle. And remember, you can text me or write down questions as we go here, and we'll get to them in a sec. But the limbic system is in the middle of the brain. And what this is called, slang, is a reward center. And so in the reward center, when we do something well, like we win a championship, we get a good mark on a test, we have a great time with friends, there's chemicals that are released that feels great. There's dopamine, there's oxytocin. There's different chemicals for men and for women that get released in the limbic system, and that's why it's called the reward center, because it feels great when you get rewarded for doing something great. Well, what happens with sex is that we're designed to enjoy it. We're designed to want it. We're designed that the chemicals that are released in the limbic system, the limbic part of the brain, there's a bonding, like with oxytocin, there's a bonding agent that forms, and so the person that you're with, all of a sudden you think they're even more attractive than you did before. This is what the chemicals are supposed to do. If there was, just bear with me on this bad example, but if there was 10 people and all of them would say they're a 7 out of 10 attractiveness, and then you get married and you come together and you have sex with one of them, all of a sudden that one should be like a 9 and the rest should be like a 5. Sorry, I don't talk like that except for that example. I feel bad. But you guys understand what I'm saying. The chemicals that are released are a bonding agent where they're supposed to bond you and make you come back together in marriage. But when there's different sexual releases that we have with different people or always with a screen, the limbic system still releases the same chemicals, but we get attached to the screen or we get attached to different people. And so the amount of pleasure that we have with this individual person starts to diminish because they're just like everybody else. And so we need to understand the power, like the blessing and the curse of the limbic system and how this stuff is made. So the limbic system releases dopamine. And what dopamine does is it's kind of like, if you can picture, I'm a golfer, so if you can picture this, it also happens on golf courses, but sprinklers that go in a circle and they're like, ch-ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. So with dopamine, the dopamine receptors are constantly releasing dopamine into the brain to make it feel good when we have a sexual release. When someone takes a hit of cocaine, for example, they'll get one hit of dopamine, it'll go super high, feels euphoric, and then after about 20 minutes, it'll crash. And so the dopamine hit with cocaine will say be here. The dopamine hit with porn will be about here. It's not as much. But with drugs, it crashes. With porn, it just keeps on going for hours. And continually it releases over and over and over again, just like the sprinkler, this dopamine into our brain. So what it does is it partners with delta phos B, which is a protein that creates these pathways in our brain. And so because it felt so good when we release dopamine, when we have a sexual release, now these neural pathways that are created tell us that the next time you're bored and you want to feel good, remember what you did to get in this neural pathway. Remember what you did that felt so good. You should go back and do that again. And so you go back to porn over and over and over again because you want that dopamine release, the partner with the delta phosphate, and there's nothing that compares. And so when I say that it impacts joy, scientists will tell us, I think it's about episode probably 45 on the episode, or on the podcast, and you guys can find it, and he goes into a lot more. But he's a brain scientist at the U of A in Edmonton, which is a far greater city in Alberta than Calgary is. And so actually he's not at the U of A, I think he's at Concordia, which is far greater than any college you guys have in Calgary. And so he's talking about this. He says, with porn addiction, you literally can't feel joy with anything else in your life to the same degree that you do when you have porn. And so there's a real strength, and it's scary actually, when you understand the similarities with this and a drug addiction, where there's parts of that are worse, but there's parts of this that are actually worse than a drug addiction. And we have a lot of people that come to us and say, man, I was an alcoholic, a drug addict, and a porn addict. I've quit the other two, but porn is way too hard. I haven't been able to quit it. And I've heard that a lot. And so as the limbic system is releasing all these chemicals, the frontal lobe in the front of the brain is where there's logic and where there's reason and critical thinking and problem solving. And the limbic system gets empowered and the frontal lobe gets diminished. And the frontal lobe is what develops for women, but fully when you're 21, men when we're 25. And so in our formative years now, our development has been stunted because the brain has released so much in the limbic system and crushed the frontal lobe that we can't even think with reason. We can't think critically. We can't even think with the logic that we were designed to think with because we've spent so much time watching pornography. Now the good news is this stuff can be rewired, and we help people rewire brains, and there's a elasticity to it. It's flexible. It can be changed over time. And that's what was happening with my brain, where it's like nobody's good looking and everybody's good looking, and then you come back and it's like, okay, now I'm normal. Like my brain was just going through all these changes in the rewiring process. And so when you live porn free, you get joy back. You get motivation back. You get confidence. Man, I remember the first few years living porn free where I'd just be like, man, I don't know what I like. Like, what do I like doing? When I'm bored, all I ever do is watch porn. And so I learned that I actually like doing certain things with friends and certain hobbies, and I like the outdoors, and I like writing. And there's different things. I mean, some people like drawing. Some people like writing poems. Some people like doing puzzles. There's different things that we don't know that we like when all we've ever done is gone to pornography. And so this confidence, the motivation comes when it's like I'm motivated to do healthy things now. I'm feeling great about myself. You start having empathy for other people because not everything is about you. I remember when I quit porn, driving out of a parking lot, and I was in my car, not that matters, but it's just where I was. And I remember thinking, like, I don't have to hide myself anymore. I can be fully open with people. Like, I don't need to delete my history anymore and worry about people going on my devices. And there's a direct correlation from when I quit porn to the friendships that I had getting way better in my life, both in quantity and in quality. And so that's not just for me. David, who's with me, we were having lunch with a guy, lunch, dinner, I don't know, it was 4 p.m., whatever that is. And and he was talking about that he's been free. We helped him a year and a half ago, and he's been 14 months now. And he's like, the relationships in my life that I have are just so much richer now that I don't have this thing. I don't need to live scared. I can be open. I can be fully me with people, and it's really cool. And so creativity I talked about. And so if you want to stay in touch, there's our Instagram and our Facebook. How many of you guys are on Facebook? Oh, there's a few. You guys make me feel good. Good. I was talking to, the group was younger than you. It was a youth thing a few years ago. Talking about Facebook, and my wife's like, nobody that age is on Facebook anymore. Like, oh, I didn't even know that. I thought that everybody was on Facebook. But at least go on Instagram. There's mostly daily, almost daily things on there, and people send DMs, and I love interacting with people. And there's lots of support options if we want to just get free. If you're stuck, if you're like, where do I turn? There's different support options that you can plug into, from groups to one-on-one coaching to different things that you can go through on your own. And so there's help on there. But even just with Instagram and the podcast, Pure Victory Podcast, you guys can definitely check that out, and it's free, and there's a lot of resources. So if there are questions online, I'll just look here and I'll answer some. But is it okay if I come and get some of your papers?
I was wondering, how would you approach talking about, or if a kid comes and talks to me about porn, how do you tell him how to quit in a way without...
How do you tell him how to quit?
Yeah, in a way that's, like in a way that's appropriate.
You say, stop what you're doing. So if you ask him what leads you to porn, what leads you to acting out, that tells you a whole heck of a lot about what he's lacking in his life. If he's bored, and that always leads him to watching porn, it's like why do you not manage that well? Like, what else can you do when you're bored? If he always feels like he's not good enough at school, something happens, he always feels like he's not good enough. It's like he has an inadequacy that he doesn't feel good enough in life, but he can't handle it. And so we need to be able to handle things, but it's tough when they're kids. It's tough when we're adults. And so if you ask what leads you to it, that's going to tell you a lot about not just changing the behavior, but it's like, what's in his heart? What's he lacking in his heart? So that would be one, and I'm keeping this simple as I can. Get him to tell you everything. Get him to tell you how often, when, where, if he'd be willing, what kind of pornography. There's incest porn, there's orgy porn, there's same-sex porn, there's all these different kinds. And so a lot of times we say porn, but it's like if the kind of porn that you have shame around, then that's still going to be a stronghold in your life, even though you're confessing what you do. And so you want to talk about what kind. But one of the scriptures that I always point to is in 1 John, and it says, oh, thanks. It says, walk in the light and have fellowship with one another. So walk in the light is get everything out. Is there anything else you're not telling me? Hey, I know it's scary. You know, like, I don't know your story, but say, I know a lot of people struggle with porn. Or if it's me, like, man, I struggle with this. I remember just feeling like I couldn't tell anybody. And like, man, when I first told somebody, my heart was beating like 300 beats a minute. Like I thought I was going to die. And it's terrifying. I understand probably what you're going through. But when I did this, it felt so freeing. When I shared, it felt so freeing. And I want you to experience that freedom. Like, is there anything else that you're scared to tell me? And so you kind of create that safe place for them to get everything out. And then if they're willing, at that age, if they're able to talk to their parents, then that's great. But what I would do, and I talked to the staff earlier about this, is do a youth night and do a parents' night talking about pornography. Because then we can train the parents on how to talk to the kid, and the kid knows that parents have heard about it, and so it creates the conversation at home. So I hope that answers you enough. Okay, good stuff. Okay, so is your shirt from Jack and Jones? If this is that you? Yeah. But I'll just answer this one first, sorry. Is your shirt from Jack and Jones? The value in being married as a guy is I have no idea where my clothes are from. My clothes are from my wife. There's a question?
Oh, yeah.
Are you saying how hard it is to walk free when you're still craving it? Is that? Sure. You build them up as much as you can. I'm trying to think of what I can say here. But No, your question makes sense. It's not that. It's another factor that I'm trying to think of what I can say. You build them up as much as they can, as much as you can, and continually be asking them, like what's hard, but what's that doing in you? So one thing that we teach our people is a thankfulness proximity. And so we want to be thankful in life. That's part of even rewiring the brain, is knowing how to be thankful and give thanks in all circumstances. But it's like when things suck, like how do you give thanks? And so the thankfulness proximity is, I can be thankful that I have a family and friends, but like I'm not thankful for this struggle. But how can you be thankful for that struggle? That really changes a perspective on the struggle. So if you can build them up and cheer them on and just say, like, you don't have to be perfect. You come to me when you're struggling. Even if it's not temptation, just like I'm struggling with shame. I'm struggling with whatever it would be. And then you build them up, but also like, what's this doing in you? What do you think this is going to do for you a year from now if you continue on? Because we don't want to go towards hard things. Like we go to the path of least resistance. And so if something's just hard, we don't want to think about it. But if that hard thing, we can go, yeah, but I'm thankful for this and I see what it's doing in me. Then we're not going to resist it and we're going to continue on the path. So does that kind of answer your question? Kind of help? That's one of the, if we have a faith in God, that relationship with him is everything too, and bring him into that. But it depends on who you're walking with. And so anyways, I hope that helps. And again, if you guys have more questions, send a DM on Instagram or email me. Talk to Josh if you don't have my contact, and I'd love to help. So, are some individuals in the porn industry victims of sex trafficking, forced, taken into porn? Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I say, some of those girls are young and they're kidnapped by their sex trafficker and uploaded onto Pornhub. That option isn't available anymore, but the videos can still be out there on different sites. But girls are just tricked into it. There's girls that are flown from, in the States, like it'll be like New Hampshire, way over here, to California, way over here, like as far away as you can get from your family, and they do that purposefully. The porn industry does, because if they can isolate the person and say, hey, I'm drawing you in for this promise of being a really attractive and famous model, and then they draw them in far away from their family, they don't have an option of having a support system to run to, so they corner them in a hotel room, and okay, this is what you're doing, and if you're not doing this, then we're not going to pay for your flight back, or we're going to take you to the spot. And so it's really sick how they get people in. Even if they're 18, 19 years old, they'll trap people into getting into the industry. And once they're in, it's hard to get out because of the drugs and the financial manipulation and just the control that the directors and the agents have over the actors. So, one guy said to me, though, he's struggling with getting out of his porn addiction, and he's like, but not everybody in the industry is part of sex trafficking, although some of them are. But I had to say, that's 100% true. But what about the people who aren't there and who are just thinking that this is what they want in their life? Like, think about the pain that they must have in their life to get to that spot in life. And so even if they're not part of the sex trafficking industry, but they're there because they supposedly want it, like, how much abuse have they not dealt with in their life that they're at that point? So no matter how you look at it, I don't think it's a good thing. What is the one most practical way to stop viewing pornography permanently? Gouge out your eyes. That'll do it. Then you can never view it. What is the one most practical way to stop viewing porn permanently? What I already said is walk in the light, have fellowship with one another, having a community, but also getting everything out. So if a secret is in the dark, it's going to grow. But if a secret comes into the light, it doesn't have power in the darkness anymore. And so you got to get the secret out. But it's not just, hey, I watch porn. It's the type of porn. It's all of the things that you've done. It's, I went on this app and I met with this person. I lied to this person about watching porn. This is the story that I would tell. And this is why I didn't want to ever tell somebody, because I was scared of what you would think of me if I told you, because of this. And so you get all of the shame out, you get all of the guilt out, like, man, because of watching porn, I've hurt my parents, and I felt like, man, even my brother, I got him into it, and I wasn't able to help him get out, and I feel so guilty because of how I've impacted people. This might be not the answer you're thinking of, what's the one most practical way, but remember, the only reason we watch porn is to escape something, to escape our reality. So if our reality is full of guilt and shame and consequences and all of these things, of course we're going to want to escape it. But if we're willing to get everything off of our chest, we feel so much lighter, and we feel like, oh, I'm loved by people. I'm loved by the person that I'm sharing with. I can actually go share this with somebody else because that actually felt good. And you start sharing in the light and you start impacting people. There's a lot more. I mean, we work with people over a long period of time to get free, but that's the first step, I would say, along with just practical boundaries. I joke about gouging out your eyes, but like literally get a flip phone, get accountability software. If you have a computer, like don't use it when you're not alone. Only use it in the presence of people. Go to Starbucks if you have to do homework. Those practical things, like just don't allow yourself to have access, and then tell people what you're doing. Hey, I'm not allowing myself to use my computer in my room anymore, and I'm telling you so that I don't do it, and you can ask me. So you're having people come in and support you, and you're getting all of your secrets out so that they can't hold that over your head, or you can't. They can hold it over your head, and you can't let that secret grow in the dark. So that's kind of what I would initially say, just as a quick answer. So, yo, hello, no question. These are some of the other notes. So, hey, awesome, good stuff. If there's no more questions, I hope that helps. But if you want help, feel free to reach out. And I just encourage you to do it. It's not scary. We're not scary. We actually laugh a lot, but we also cry a lot with people. I'm not afraid to say it. There's so much freedom that happens when we're walking with people, and all of the trauma and the hurts in their life. Even some of you I know have been sexually abused, which is horrible and horrific, but it's not the trauma that necessarily cripples us for life. It's undealt with trauma, and we got to deal with that. And so if that's been in your life, I mean, just reach out and tell somebody, because it's a lot of fun, but also quite emotional and just freeing, walking with people to freedom. So if you want help, email, Instagram, get a hold of me somehow. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. Again, if you guys have any more questions, or if you want to get Matt's contact info, come chat with me after. If you want to follow the podcast, it's Pure Victory, right? That's what it's called. And restoredministries.ca is the website. If you guys want to look at some of his programs, and they offer really cool stuff. Yeah, so thanks again, Matt.